Well, welcome back. Welcome back to another Friday. I hope you were well. As always, it's always a pleasure to have you join me. I'm going to be speaking about priorities and purpose in today's session, but I'm going to connect it to what I call two opposing views or worlds. Priorities and purpose in opposing worlds. To get things started, let me use perhaps a reference that many people may have come across. Many people may have either read or heard. Many years ago, there was something called Acres of Diamonds. It was a book actually published so many years ago. The idea of the book, fundamentally, the theme of the book had to do with a reminder that sometimes what we are looking for in life is not too far from where we are, and that what we seek is not always far up north or south or east or west, but within proximity to where we are. And what we need to uncover those acres of diamonds that are around us is wisdom, understanding, knowledge. I'm going to weave in to today's conversation those three words. Keep those in mind. Now, to get things started, I went back and I was looking at an experience we had some time ago, and this was a wedding between two lovely couples. This goes back a while, and on each of the tables there were papers that had been provided for people to leave words of affirmation, recommendations, draw diagrams, just anything that came to you, and it was a gift that the couple would look at eventually. And as I started thinking about what to say, these are two lovely couples that have just come together. Huge congratulations, by the way, especially in today's world where people defer for so long and it never happens. The idea that you commit each other through marriage is one of the blessings of life. But then I took, like other people took to pen and paper, and I couldn't necessarily say something profound, but something came to mind and I started to write several words. I'm going to give you some other words. Love, attentiveness, duty, honor, responsibility, commitment, hard work, forgiveness, adaptability, understanding. And as I listed all these words down, love was the last that I actually wrote, although it was the first that I mentioned intentionally in this video. I drew a line across love. And then I said, and I highlighted the others that remained. They will get you through. Now, I have, for many years, been of the view that to the man with a hammer, everything seems like a nail. And love is like a tool. Its applicability is necessary, is needed, but not for all applications. Now, we have made a mistake, especially with the Disneyfication in the West, where we've brought to the front of every relationship the word love. Is it needed? Absolutely. Is it necessary? Absolutely. Is it sufficient? Unfortunately not. In many ways, it's one of those fascinating things where you can have love, but it will still be incomplete. Now, I talk about the concept of H2O, how one missing ingredient, how something that is not included in the overall bowl of life can cause discomfort. You can have the best looking car. If I remove one of the tires and you have no spare tire, then the car doesn't work. Love is one of those ingredients that make relationships work. It has a purpose, it has a priority, but it's not the ingredient for everything. Now, some people use Marmite on everything they have. It doesn't mean Marmite is designed to be used for everything that is edible. There is a purpose for everything. I said that in yesterday's session, but the purpose of each thing is not always known in advance. Therefore, when we use it in the wrong way, we abnormally use it, and we could be going through life not recognizing that the acres of diamonds that we require to make life successful is just around you. And the words I gave you, I want you to keep those words in mind, because as you go through life, whether it's business or personal, you will find that each of those things, each of those words will hold you in good stead. Now, success in relationships is not a mystery. It becomes a mystery when we replace success and we connect love to success. If you believe love is the only ingredient you need to make a relationship successful, then we wouldn't have divorces. Now, in the UK, unfortunately, the average duration of marriages or unions, legal unions, is about 7 years. It's trending downwards. At the start of the relationship, each of those people would say we really loved each other. At the moment when they were signing the divorce papers, or filing for divorce, or separating, some of them might even say, I still love him, I still love her, but I cannot live with her or live with him. Some might also say, the love is gone. Now, we go through an in-love phase. So, love is like an emotion. It's necessary, but you have to remember, if all you have is a hammer and you're trying to build a great building, you will not go very far. You need nails, you need wood, you need metal, you need a plan, you need stone, you need other ingredients to make a relationship successful. Now, in today's session, I'm going to connect the two opposing worlds, and I will try to show how understanding of the two opposing worlds can help you go through the transfiguration process required to make whatever relationship you have to be more successful. But also, this is applicable, this is the great thing about life, that success keys work across several doors. It's like having a master key that opens multiple doors. I talk about this in my book, Wisdom Keys in Words. In any case, think about this concept. I have talked about relationships for a while, and of late I have been focusing on how we have two worlds opposing. One is the modern, one is the traditional. Most people choose which they prefer to be the dominant or the only. And some others don't have a choice. They simply are conditioned in a particular way of life, either by geography or by inheritance or by preference. It doesn't matter. But we have a traditional and a modern approach to dating and relationships. And one of the things you have to understand is, which of the two would you choose? Of the two, which would you choose for your relationships? Because if you choose the wrong one, now I'm not suggesting one is wrong, but one could be wrong for you or for the outcomes that you want. Now remember, nothing is either good or bad. Our thinking makes it so. However, Something could be wrong for the objectives you have. Something could be right, but used wrongly in the wrong application. Now, if people are looking for a particular objective, the first thing I always say is go back to the words of Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He said, begin with the end in mind. Decide what you want and come back to the start, and then move between where you are to where you want to get to. Now, Henry David Thoreau said it in a more eloquent way. He said, if you will advance competently in the direction of your dreams and endeavor to live the life that you have imagined, that you will meet with success, unexpected in uncommon hours. In other words, decide where you want to get to, your true north. Decide or accept where you are. Move in the direction of that north, and someday you will get to where you're hoping to get to. That's the formula. Now, how you go from A to B, that is a strategy or a tactical approach. But in principle, that is the blueprint. So as we come back to relationships, let me bring it back and talk about those two divergent worlds, modern and traditional, but make reference to the fact that we live in the modern world. We just have to choose a philosophy that we will build or found our relationships on. This is a statement that I would like you to keep in mind, and tell me whether you disagree with that or not. I have said this in many of my videos. Women, generally speaking, are judged by the caliber of men they can retain. Men are judged by the caliber of women they can attract. So, put it slightly differently. In the modern world, over the past 70 years, men have been, since the dawn of time, but more so in the last 70 years, men have paid particular attention to studying women, studying the landscape, with the purpose being to understand how to apply whatever knowledge they have acquired, having understood the knowledge, to be able to get what they want. So a man studies women with the purpose of attracting a woman. We study you as ladies so that we come across as attractive, so that we can attract you. Women, on the other hand, and this is where there are issues. Women, on the other hand, now let me make another statement because I think it's very important. I talk about the importance of understanding the functions that we play. Both sexes play a gatekeeping function. A woman, generally speaking, is a gatekeeper to her emotions. She's a gatekeeper to her body, and she's a gatekeeper to her womb. In other words, who she pair bonds with, who she gives her heart to, who she gives her physical intimacy to, and therefore whose seed she brings to the next generation. Men generally want access to a woman's body, emotions, and, if she is the right woman, the ability for her to bring his seed into the next generation. So women are gatekeepers with regards to where we begin, generally speaking, as men, sex. Men, on the other hand, we play a different gatekeeping function. We are gatekeepers to relationships, but specifically marriage, because we get to decide who we propose to, who we give our last names to, or who we invite to join in merging our last name with theirs. We are therefore gatekeepers to the union, and therefore responsible for who we choose. From an attraction perspective, therefore, a woman, we have to study women to know how we will be attractive and be allowed into a woman's space. A woman has to learn how to be attractive to a man in order for the man to say, here, that's the key. Come join me, and I will join you, and let's form a union. Now, what this means is that men have to study women and women have to study men for two reasons. Men study women for attraction, women study men for retention after they have attracted the men. Now, in the West and in the UK, particularly speaking, that is where there is a divide. In 7 out of 10 marriages, women are the ones filing for 7 out of 10 divorces. Of the 30% left, or the 3 of the 10, in half that, women are the ones who instigate and ask for the divorce to be filed on their behalf by the men for whatever reason. So 8.5 out of 10 times, women are the ones leaving and filing for separation. When you've united with a man, it means both of you have come to a conclusion that we might consider to be success. You've gone through your phase and you've chosen both parties. Both parties have chosen each other, so that's success. When you separate, for whatever reason, now I'm not playing a value judgment or a moral position, I really don't care. The separation means that you failed in your North Star, because when you guys started the journey, you said, that is our North Star. If you stopped halfway through the journey, or 1/3, or 1/10 through the journey, and you say, I want to go back, it means that your objectives were not successful, for whatever reason. Therefore, you haven't been successful in retaining what you consider to be important. Now, the reason I say this is simply to connect to what I think will be the core of what we discussed today. The role that love plays, and how both parties make a mistake in not understanding what it requires, what is necessary for a successful relationship. In my interactions with women, and I think if you polled 10 women, I believe strongly that 9 of them, now irrespective of age, with some qualifications, irrespective of age, but excluding those in the silent generation and those in the great generation. If I polled baby boomers, Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and I asked them a simple question: what is the ingredient required to make a relationship thrive and be successful? A 4-letter word will come almost unanimously: love. However, we know that most relationships end within 7 years. And the younger they are, the higher the chances of divorce or separation, and the closer the dissolution will be to year 0. So if you're very young, you're more likely to be separated much faster, higher, likely, than someone who is much older. Love will be the word that people use, but we know, and this is perhaps where we start talking about the traditional and the modern approach. The modern approach is to say, well, everything's all about feelings and happiness. Happiness has become the god for most people, so much so that we've trivialized marriage as to what the purpose of marriage should be. And many people believe the purpose of marriage is to be happy. Now, in any case, let me not deviate. But if you go to the traditional approach to marriage, and you speak to those who perhaps have had a different upbringing, who've not been influenced by the Disneys and the Hallmarks and all the movie studios, they would say to you that the purpose of marriage is something beyond yourself and beyond both parties. Hence, the notes I made: duty, responsibility, hard work, honor, purpose, your lineage, forgiveness, that there's something much more than just how you feel, whilst trying not to take away the importance of feelings. That there is something bigger than yourself. By coming together, it's no longer about both of you. Really, it's then about the loins and those that you bring through your loins, the offsprings, and even more. Now, what this simply means is that on one side I have love, represented modern, and I have wisdom, representing traditional. Now, let me connect the three: wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. Now, my favorite book says that by wisdom, a house is built. Through understanding, it's established. And through knowledge, its rooms are filled with rare and precious, beautiful treasures. We replace, if we can, we replace the word house with relationship. By wisdom, a relationship or a union, a marriage is built. Through understanding, it is established, is founded. And through knowledge, all of the parts of the relationship are filled with beautiful things that people can see and admire. Not love, wisdom. If you invert that, you have three words: knowledge, wisdom, knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. The question is, how do you acquire knowledge? Now, this goes back to what I said about men. Most men these days, we understand women because we study women. We've grown up with you all of our lives. You are our mothers, our sisters, our teachers, our community leaders, our neighbors. We study women. And when we get to the age of reason and emancipation, we are attracted to women. So we have to learn, study women. We understand your ego needs and we understand your normal needs. And we do our best recognizing your uniqueness amongst all the women, and we try to understand and acquire all the traits we need for you to accept us. Some of us join bands because we're awkward, to make ourselves more attractive. Some of us actually learn and study and memorize comedy jokes to come across as funny and witty and exciting. We learn how to ride motorbikes so that we come across as being rough and rugged. We play sports so that we can excel, so that we can be esteemed. We go through all the steps just to be attractive. But we study you first to know how to adapt to your various needs. Therefore, most men in the West and in places outside the West go through the three steps with regards to women: knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. When we meet you, we have studied you, but in a different form. There's an avatar we use. But we cannot just be linear. We're diverse in our study, so we learn so many things. Then we try to understand you when we meet you, and then we try to apply what we know and based on feedback from how you respond. Therefore, you tend to find that when it comes to attracting women, men are more successful at attracting women than women are at retaining men. The reason women fail at retaining men is you don't know us. You do not really honor us. Your desire to study, learn about us is minimal. As a matter of fact, most women are raised to believe that a man is gifted just by having you in his presence, and that there is nothing required of you, preparation-wise, to be in a relationship. That all you have to do is show up, because what is between your legs is all that we need and care about. And then once you reproduce for us, that is the highest honor you can give us, which I agree, but there is nothing else you need to do. So there is no fascination, there is no interest, there is no curiosity about the male experience. I say to most women, foreplay is the first time you play with a man. You may have grown up with brothers, but you still do not know our egos, our fragility, our fears, our concerns, our desires, our wants. You do not have any interest in us. Therefore, when you get married to us or come into a relationship with us, because you have not studied us and therefore do not have the knowledge, do not have the understanding, therefore lacking comprehension to apply said knowledge, you do not know how to retain us. Our job is to be attractive enough for you to accept us. A woman's role is to be wise enough to retain the man when she has attracted the man. Now, a controversial take. I hope you're not surprised. In any case, let me talk about the two worlds. Let me bring this together. I think this is where you'll find this interesting. And this explanation about the two separate worlds applies to anything in life. I'm just using relationships as a useful guide to understanding how it affects you, but also what you can do. I can talk about the problems. Here is the solution. If what I am saying is true, irrespective of the party involved, whether that be men or women, and whether that be the attraction game or the retention game, I am suggesting that you have two opposite worlds. One is ignorance, and the other is the part that leads to success, negative and positive. Ignorance, if that is what you have, or the lack of knowledge, if you prefer that term, will always lead to worry and doubt. So think about this carefully. If you are a young woman and you don't understand men, now let me give you a useful example. Many years ago in London, South London, in Clapham, there was a young girl who was sadly killed by a police officer. And tragedy. And there was a vigil. This was during the lockdown, and a lot of women took to the streets to protest violence amongst women. It was a very bizarre time. I cannot remember her name. One of the ladies in the House of Lords came up with a proposal to have a curfew for men beyond 6. All men should be locked up and not allowed to come out because we are so much of a threat to women. There was so much news about the whole death, but there was also so much ignorance. Every day a man dies, no one bats an eyelid. In this particular case, a young woman died, and people behaved as though this was the norm, that men were just naturally violent towards women, which is a lie. The data doesn't support that. In any case, we have young boys being murdered on the streets of London, stabbing each other, using knives, every day in London. No one cares. But a young woman dies and suddenly men are beasts. Now, I would have said that that was a position taken from ignorance, meaning people were ignoring all of the knowledge and data that existed. This was a tragedy, but all men were not evil. Now, I found it fascinating, which is why I go back to the point I made about you live with us, but you don't know us because you have no interest in studying us. And many young women these days are raised without fathers. So the concept and the ideology that most women have in their installation software is men are evil, men are demons. And as you listen to this, some of you will be thinking sexist, misogynistic, pig, all the ad hominem attacks and pejorative words will be used. Why? Because in your disposition, you have no respect for men at the core. Some of you have never really had the love of a man, whether that be a father, a brother, a cousin, an uncle. And therefore, your experiences of men have come from a place of ignorance and fear. Now, let me go back to the two worlds so you can understand how I can juxtapose both conversations. Any decision made from a place of ignorance, or, let me take a step back. Human beings, in my opinion, at their very core, are spiritual beings. We live in a physical body. In other words, we're having a physical experience. But we've been gifted with an intellect, and the way we use our intellectual faculties determine our emotional state. So we live in what I will call 3 levels of understanding. There are 3 parts of our personality. But let's separate the spiritual. Let's put that aside because not everyone believes what I believe, nor should they. I would say this in any case, that in trying to understand yourself, you can go to 2 sources, theology or science. Let's say you don't believe the theological route and you believe in the scientific way. The problem, we eliminate spirit. And we then simply say, there are 2 parts to you, an intellect or a mind, and your body, physical. Now, most people would agree that the great scientists and the great teachers have said we have 2 parts to our mind, conscious, subconscious. And at our conscious mind, we have what we call sensory faculties that enable us to see, smell, taste, touch, and hear. This is how we interact with our environment and our world. And as we collect information, that information goes into our subconscious mind, and some of it goes down to our subconscious mind. Our conscious mind is therefore our rational thinking mind, and our subconscious mind is our emotional mind. It doesn't choose between what's right or wrong, real or imagined. Like a sponge, it just absorbs. And that we're supposed to be able to use our sensory faculties in an intelligent way to choose carefully the information we allow into our mind so that we are protected by what goes into our subconscious mind. If we're not careful, then we go into a pattern of habits whereby our decisions are not necessarily being made by choice. They are being made by habits. Habitual behaviors that are already installed in our subconscious mind, which was why in the session I did yesterday, I talked about how some of our decisions are based on installed softwares in ourselves that have come from people before us, parents, loved ones. Let me give you a good example. A child doesn't get to choose their faith, religious faith. It all comes from what family and what location, what region they are born into. They could be born in the East, and therefore they might choose, or rather their parents may have chosen a particular religion, and that is gifted to the child. It's only until the child gets to about 18 and then has the ability to change or choose a different pathway. But for 18 years, they have been operating based on an installation from their parents and their parents' parents or their environment. And what this simply means is that for most of us, the success we have in relationship are coming from our installed software system that I call habits. So we go back, the two separate worlds, ignorance and knowledge, negative and positive. Any decision you make, now I should have said this, your sensory faculties therefore can be used. In other words, remember when I talked about gatekeepers? A great mentor once said, every day stand guard at your sensory gates. Be careful about what you hear, what you see, because what controls your thoughts controls your life. And whatever you focus on, your energy moves in that direction. Therefore, be careful about who you are around, what they're saying, how they influence you, subtle or explicitly. We, generally speaking, understand our sensory faculties, but on the intellectual plane, we do not know how to use our intellectual faculties. Imagination, will, memory, intuition, perception, and I may have said memory. So we have 6 intellectual faculties, but we do not know, haven't been trained or taught how to use them. Reason, how to think. So if we do not select carefully what comes into our conscious mind and it goes into our subconscious, and we do not also develop the ability to use our intellectual faculties, then we automatically operate on what I call automatic mode. These are just habits. Other people's habits, other people's teachings, other people's fears live lives installed in our system, and therefore we function in the same way. So, if you were raised in a family without a man, a father, a brother, a loved one, someone you looked up to, it would mean that in your installed system, you have no examples. But you have an example of a woman. Therefore, you understand women and you respect women. But with men, there's an apprehension because you haven't actually had either a loving father be there for you at all times. Therefore, you operate from a place of ignorance. Now, this applies whether you are a man or a woman. Ignorance will always lead to worry and doubt. Worry and doubt occurs in your mind, but it moves from your conscious mind to your subconscious mind. At the moment when it moves down to your subconscious mind, Worry and doubt will be transformed into fear. This is partly why most women are fearful about men. Going back to the example in Clapham, most women are fearful about men. Hence, the lady in the house was saying, well, we should put a curfew on all men after 6 p.m. Now, you could not have made that decision if you had a loved one, such as a loving husband, or had a son, or had cousins, or positive male role models growing up. Because what you should have seen as examples were good, honest, kind men. The same men that went to the beaches of Normandy and died for our freedom. We have the history of men. In today's day and age, we have men dying in Ukraine. Remember, when the crisis began, women and children could leave. Men could not leave. They had to stay, fight to defend their nation. So we have examples of men who were good. But if you have had no picture, experience, then you would be operating from a place of fear. Now, fear has to manifest itself through the body. This is the fascinating thing about the mind-body experience. And it would do so, unfortunately, in the form of anxiety. This is partly why some women are very anxious around men. They're very anxious when they begin relationships. They almost self-sabotage immediately. They begin with ignorance. They move into a state of worry and doubt. That worry and doubt converts to fear, sometimes unprovoked. It manifests through their body as anxiety. Now, anxiety is a fascinating thing about the human body. When you become anxious about something, you have one of two choices. You can release it, in other words, through the power of displacement, or you can suppress it. Now, when you suppress anxiety, it will always lead to a state of depression, emotional depression. Most women in the West are at a state of emotional depression, which is why they self-sabotage, always. Now, depression will always lead to what we call disease. Disease will lead to disintegration of the relationship, which will lead to the destruction or the death of the union. File for divorce. The opposite world and the solution is to replace ignorance with this polar opposite. We call it the power of displacement, the law of displacement. I walk into this space and it's bright. If I turn off the light switch, darkness displaces the light. If I want to restore the light, I turn on the light switch, light displaces the darkness. Darkness is never that far away, and light is never that far away. Light is knowledge, darkness is ignorance. So if you want to be successful in your relationships, and if you go back to the words I started today's conversation with, the question is, how do you acquire all of those skills, attitudes, abilities? It begins with knowledge. Knowledge will always lead to understanding. But knowledge in itself is just information. We are surrounded with so much information today, but we have to study. So the sessions I do, although they are perhaps different to your belief system, and although they are not necessarily consistent with perhaps what you consider to be the truth, it's an additional piece of information that allows you to study further, which, if you did so, will provide you with more understanding. Now, whether you accept or you reject, but it will provide you with more understanding. The key thing here is as follows. You have to study. If you want to be successful in relationships as a woman, you have to study men. We're very, very simple. I say this to some of my friends who are female. I said, women, you complicate who we are as men. We're very simple. But you have to be willing to study us. You have to have some curiosity, some interest, some fascination. You actually have to like us beyond what we give to you in terms of our wallets or sexually. There has to be an interest. Knowledge, if you study, will lead to understanding. Understanding will always create faith. Now remember, ignorance and worry creates fear. So two people can be dating, one operating from a place of faith and the other from a place of fear. Both are a function of what you hear. Faith comes by what you hear. Faith leaves by what you hear. Fear comes by what you hear. Fear leaves by what you hear. What separates both? The power of displacement. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by what you hear. The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Now, there are so many great women that operate from a place of faith, and there are so many great men that operate from a place of fear. But if you have faith, faith will always lead to well-being, which is why when you meet people who have faith, they have this peace, this peaceful aura around them, because they're operating from a place of hope, belief, and possibilities. Well-being has to be expressed through the body, in the same way that anxiety is expressed through the body. Fear is expressed in the form of anxiety in the body. If you are in a place of faith and well-being, it will be expressed through your body as well. Now, when expressed, what you find is those who have faith and those who are in a good place relationally move at a fast speed. They accelerate. They don't have to be oiled. There isn't that much friction. It's not a slow locomotive. It's a speed train. They're moving fast. Why? They are trying to get from where they are to their North Star, their true north. Acceleration. They understand Henry David Thoreau's view. If you can imagine and move, you will achieve what you want. So there is an acceleration for those who have faith, simply because they keep studying, they keep learning, and they acquire the knowledge, they have the understanding. And here's the key thing: they start to apply what they know. The acceleration puts them in a place of being at ease. Those who have ignorance are at a state of disease. Those who have faith are at ease. This leads you to a state of creation. Our natural state should be one of creation. In the beginning, we know what it says. Our natural being is a creative being. Now, people say, well, I'm not creative, and she's very creative, and he's very creative. We are all creative. The difference is those who operate from a place of knowledge manifest creativity, and those who operate from a place of ignorance, unfortunately, manifest disintegration. Now, if you have creation, you will always have life and growth. Relationships are not complicated. The key question is, are you operating from a place of ignorance? Or are you even operating from a place of using one ingredient called love, which is an emotional state, which changes? Or are you operating from a place of knowledge, and therefore pursuing understanding and applying what you have learned and developing wisdom? Your relationships can be made simple. Whether you choose the traditional pathway or the modern pathway, it can be made very simple. You have to recognize the two opposing worlds and recognize you can't serve two masters. You have to choose. Now, my invitation to you would be, if you are a man, you have to study. If you are a woman, you also have to study. Your success will be a function of your willingness to be curious and fascinated about learning more, so that you understand what the other party needs. And here is perhaps the most important thing. So you give them what they want. I am sometimes surprised and stunned by how little men are happy, willing to give women what they want, or women are happy and willing to give men what they want. Usually when there is a separation, it often comes down to the point of both parties refusing to say, I understand you, I know what you want, and I'm willing to give you what you want. I think we could have more success in our communities, in our families, if we just understood each other just a little bit more, and if we're willing to give each other what we each want. Now, I hope today's session has been useful.